Hello, friends. Welcome back to Feminine Roadmap Inspires. And today, my storyteller is Susie Levan. She is an author. She is a spiritual warrior. She is a life coach, and she has written the #1 Amazon release, Getting to Forgiveness: What a Near-Death Experience Can Teach Us About Loss, Resiliency, and Love. She is going to share her personal story about resiliency and divine purpose with us today. So, Susie, without further ado, thank you so much for joining me today.
Gina, it's my honor. Thank you so much for sharing my story today with your audience.
Absolutely. I'm really excited to share your story. I know it's powerful. I've had the privilege of hearing it before. So, without further ado, why don't you go ahead and share what your story is?
Thank you, Gina. Well, December 21, 1988, a date I'll never forget. My old life ceased to exist. In fact, it was obliterated. 1988 was a huge year for me. It was the year I married the love of my life, my husband. We were married in September of that year. 3 months later, life as I had known it for 38 years collapsed around me. Little did I know at the time, out of my great despair was to come my greatest gift. And I tell you that right up front so that you can really listen to what that means. On that day, December 21, 1988, my new husband of 3 months was chairman and CEO of a bank in our local community. My 7-year-old daughter from a previous marriage and I were targets of a bank robbery and kidnapping. Lauren and I would spend 5 hours in the trunk of a car, lying in fetal position. We became ransom and their hostages. And we were now put in this trunk of the car and we were in Florida heat, extreme Florida heat, which was excruciating, I have to say. It was incredibly hot and we could hardly breathe. I sang her songs while we were in the trunk of the car. I told her funny stories, everything I could think of while the car was moving. My goal was not to act scared and to try and keep my daughter from being traumatized. At some point in time, hours into the drive, they finally stopped driving. And I just basically assumed that we were left to die. Now this, what I would call a metal coffin, is the trunk of the car. Thought we were left to die in the Everglades. And I told my daughter that I was really tired, that I had not slept the night before. What I failed to tell you is that the 3 gunmen technically slept in our home that night, waiting for dawn to come for them to take us and put us in the trunk of the car. So of course, sleeping wasn't something that I did that night. So I told her I was tired and to close her eyes, and that both of us should nap. All the while believing that we would just die any minute by taking our last breath and die of asphyxiation. Now with our eyes totally closed, feeling that way, I totally silently began to pray. I could hear her now falling asleep. And I began to pray the 23rd Psalm, which was a prayer that I had heard in many funerals with friends or family had passed. And I'm not sure where it came from, but it just popped into my head. And I began to pray, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me lie in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leadeth me in the path of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest the table before me in the presence of my enemies. Thou anoints my head with oil. As I'm thinking about it, I'm there right now with you. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. And I can tell you, Gina, that at that very moment, I immediately asked God to take me. And I said, God, my daughter does not deserve to die this way. She's 7 years old. Please take me. And in seconds, I am not kidding you, as I finished praying and asking for God to take me, all of a sudden, something unfamiliar and clearly supernatural began to occur. a phenomenon I had never heard of, but what I know today is called a near-death experience. And I literally began to leave my body from the top of my head. My spirit, my soul was traveling at 1,000,000 miles a minute up through my head. And I was now in a tunnel of light that was lined with beautiful colors, pulsing with beautiful heavenly and mystical sounds. And all of a sudden, my eyes were closed, mind you, but I could feel and see all of this. And I felt a sense of peace and serenity. And all of a sudden, I felt that, and I knew that I was now surrounded by these beautiful beings of light. And I immediately was given a panoramic life review where I was shown my life history. I had nothing, and with nothing left out. It was really mind-blowing, no pun intended. It felt like I had relived everything that I had been shown up to that moment in time. My life review was intense and it was very vivid, and everyone I had interacted with up to that time, without judgment, was life-changing on so many levels. It actually showed me that my beliefs and my thoughts and my convictions and my judgments and my lack of forgiveness was very clear, and that I needed to see things in a new light. It was very clear. That was the clarity, and the aha moment was unbelievable. So these bright, pure energy beings of light were now surrounding me with a thought came to me. It was just a thought. And the first thought that came to me was, am I dead? Am I in heaven? And where's my daughter? They responded telepathically, just literally. I could hear their thoughts speaking back to me, saying, you are not dead. You are here on another plane. We've lifted the veils, and you are now here with us. And there's nothing to be afraid of. You are not dead. Look down. Look down. And I looked down, and I could literally see my daughter and me in fetal positions in the trunk of the car. It was like a camera looking down. It was very, very clear. Then I began receiving telepathically messages, a spiritual dialogue, if you will, of things that I needed to be reminded of, my life's purpose, my soul contract. Now I question, a soul contract? What was that? What is that? I didn't know anything about that at the time, but they later gave me lots of information about a soul contract, and that I was meant to live through this process to understand all of this. Now, I would retrieve all of these revelations and spiritual messages a few years later, not right away. And I'll tell you how later. But I was very lucky that a therapist that I had hired when I couldn't take it any longer put me under hypnosis. And during the hypnosis process, she also recorded it and allowed me to hear all the messages that I, in fact, had received. So it was very powerful. So all of a sudden, I've now received all of these telepathic messages, and I am now going back into my physical body through the same tunnel of light, now reversed, where I'm now floating back into my body at 1,000,000 miles a minute, traveling back. And now remember this, my daughter was napping. Her eyes were closed. Technically, my eyes were closed. I have no idea how much time this had elapsed since I had gone up and now had come down. And all of a sudden, this thud sound happened. My daughter started to cry, opened her eyes, woke up because it was so loud, it woke her. I opened my eyes because now I'm back in my physical body. And there is a baseball size opening in this Mercedes-Benz trunk where it wasn't there before. Baseball size, okay? We are now looking up into the trunk of the car where this opening is, and oxygen is flowing in. We can see the little particles of light. We can see the clouds, the puffy clouds passing by. We can see the blue sky. We can see the telephone wires. And I literally start crying. I mean, the tears are just flowing down my eyes. And I know that for sure This is a miracle that has been given to us, divine intervention to keep us alive. And I say to her, Mommy was just with the angels and with God, and Alan is going to come get us very soon, and we'll go home. Because she was done. I had told her a little white lie when we got into the trunk of the car. I told her that we were playing hide and go seek. And as a 7-year-old, she was with her mommy, and she was okay with that. Because all the while, my goal was to keep this child from being traumatized. And so, of course, she was not frightened in any way and was very calm. And actually, both of us were smiling while this oxygen was flowing in, because honestly, we would have been dead in seconds. I'm not kidding you, based on how much time we now had elapsed in the trunk of this car, which of course I had no clue about. So to my anguish and despair, unfortunately, the kidnapping and the burden of being in the trunk of the car and the fearful 5 hours that I was in there, and having done everything in my power, which of course I had no power, none. It was something I had no control over, or what was going to happen to us. And when I knew for in fact we had been left to die, all of that energy of fear took its toll on me physically, mentally, emotionally, and in every other form. I emerged from that dark terror deeply traumatized. I was the one traumatized and broken from the fear, the anxiety, and everything that I was holding on to be strong for Lauren. I was suffering from what I can only describe as post-traumatic stress disorder, something that obviously a condition that, we hear from military personnel when they come back from war. And it's a very complicated disorder, but it really takes such an incredible toll on you that you don't even realize what is going on with your mind. It is a mental illness. It is a mental disorder. I was having night sweats, daymares, nightmares. It felt like I was living and reliving this loop of these 3 gunmen in my home from the night before, over and over and over and over. In fact, I felt like I was eaten alive, and the overwhelming fear and anxiety and intense perpetual loop of the experience, I was not able to regulate it. It just was terrifying, and no one knew how to help me, because my thoughts were just my thoughts. From the outside, I looked perfectly okay. So it was a really complicated scenario for those who really didn't understand what I was going through personally. And my poor husband of 90 days, imagine, he had now, where I was chief operating officer of a public company for 16 years, a professional, a businesswoman, someone who was capable and making decisions and doing so many things to make me that I was successful at, and now couldn't even function, wouldn't get out of bed. And I was a total wreck. There was no escape though. And I could not, even every time I closed my eyes to try to sleep, I could not escape this ongoing loop of these men. So I really was in a deep, dark, what they call the dark night of the soul, space of hopelessness and despair. I was numb. I was paralyzed. My body had been holding on to this trauma in every cell, in every bone, and every muscle. I cried much of the time. I didn't get out of bed. I was in a rage. I was angry. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't think. I couldn't eat. I couldn't focus. And in fact, I couldn't take care of my daughter. Couldn't take care of my husband. I couldn't leave my house. And in fact, when my husband, we moved into a hotel for about 3 months until my husband found a house for us to move into. My requirements were that it had to have a very high gate and that we would have 24-hour wagon hut guards outside the house. So imagine what was going on in my mind when this is now past and over with. I just really wanted to have 2 or 3 days to string together, because just to feel normal again, because the fact is I'd lost sight of it. I had no idea what that might feel like anymore. I felt like a prisoner. Mind you, I'm the one that had the Wackenhut guards living outside my home. And every ounce of everything that I was feeling literally consumed me every single day. Every ounce of the fear, the anxiety, the pain. Now, I know everyone has trauma in their life, and I know everyone has challenges and difficulties and all sorts of things that go on. And my experience, of course, is unique to me, and I understand that. But no life, and you know this probably from interviewing so many people, that no life is without some sort of trauma or emotional highs or challenging lows or some sort of anxiety and pain and fear. And what I know at this time, after 32 years, the trauma comes in many forms. Comes in acute, chronic, and complex. And like my traumatic event, which was overwhelming beyond anything I would have ever imagined, when you think that you are close to imminent death, it's a whole different type of trauma. And that's where I was stuck in this loop. And by the way, you know, even though I did not die, I felt that I had lost so many things that were so incredibly important to me, such as I'd lost my job. I never went back to my job. This was my career, as I said, of 16 years. I lost my home of 6 years, which I never went back to. This is the home that my husband moved into when we got married, because I could not return. I was unable to return because I was paralyzed from the events that obviously had occurred in the house. So I could not go back to my home. I lost my family in a sense, because in reality, they did not understand what I was going through. They had no clue. As kind and sweet and wonderful as they were, I felt completely disconnected and unable to be fully present with them, because they did not understand, and I could not describe the mental anguish that I was living in. And for the first time, I lost my fear, my sense of safety and security, because I was anchorless, I was rudderless, and I lived in fear 24 hours a day. So the truth is, I was in a tailspin that nobody knew how to work with or to work through or to figure out. And I almost lost my will to live. I really did. I had gotten to a place where I could not understand why God would let me live in this darkness after they had, after he had, and the angels and Archangel Michael, who also showed up for me, had given us this miracle and this divine intervention to keep us alive. Why was I stuck in this now for 2 years of anguish and pain? I mean, I was wallowing, I was exhausted, I was helpless, powerless. And I was the one in mental prison while these guys were gone the whole time. So intuitively, on a soul level, I would say, I had to do something to heal. And I got down on my knees one day where I was at my wit's end, where I said, I almost lost my will to live. And I got down on my knees and I asked God to show me, to send me, to give me a way to heal, that I really had no idea what to do, that I was stuck, and that I really needed his help. And the next morning, I felt a clarity for the first time that I hadn't in a very long time. I really felt like I had received some sort of divine guidance in my mind. I had a clarity. I felt like my prayer had been answered, and that I needed to find the courage now to get up, muster all that courage, because literally I never left my room. My room was blackout drapes. And if I ate something. When my husband came home, it's because he brought it upstairs. And even then it would just sit on the side table. So I needed to find a way, and with all the strength that I could muster from this trauma, and use it as a tipping point now to find a way to find my soul purpose, connect with my soul contract, mind you, that I didn't even think about at that moment in time up to that point. But I had to find the courage. And to me, courage is the ability to do something that is difficult or scary, and something that also makes you step out of your comfort zone. And therapy was not something that ever even occurred to me. And for that matter, never occurred to my husband. Imagine that. This was 1988. Lots of people in those years, really, it was not top of the mind. And especially if you didn't have that as part of your, you know, I don't know, part of your physical way of handling things or emotional ways of handling things, to talk to a therapist. So it never came up. So the message that I received was that I would not just have to grab the courage, but I was going to drive to a beauty salon and sit next to a person who would be the person that was going to heal me. Now, mind you, imagine you telling your husband this after being in this state for 2 years and telling him that God had responded. I felt that I could now take a shower, get dressed, look decent, brush my hair, put on some makeup, and try and drive. Mind you, I've not driven in 2 years because all the while I felt that the villains were sitting outside my house waiting for me to drive out the door to finish the job. That was what was in my head. So I shared with this message or dream that I had had with my husband, and he, God bless him, and we are still married 32 years later, took me on the Saturday afternoon, which was the time that I heard in my dream, sit next to this person and ask her what she does for a living. So I did. And this person told me that she was a hypnotherapist, pastoral counselor, and coach. So I said, oh, well, would you mind giving me your card? And so, sure, she gave me her card after her manicure had dried, and I'm getting a manicure next to her. A manicure, I hadn't gotten a manicure since the day that this happened to me. So, P.S., she and I spoke on the phone that day for over 3 hours. And having had that conversation with such a loving being that I knew from the minute that I met her, just the tenderness in her eyes and the love in her eyes and the kindness, that she would be the one that was going to help me heal. And if that wasn't divine intervention, I don't know what was. But I continue to receive these wonderful, moments of clarity that are given to me for me to listen and to do something with it. So I had to take these baby steps of coming to see her on a weekly basis, 2-3 times a week, to have therapy, both spoken as well as hypnosis. And hypnosis was not something that I had ever done, clearly out of my comfort zone. And I'm a control freak, AAA personality. Imagine thinking hypnosis, it kind of creates this, you think in your mind that hypnosis is that you're out of control and somebody can make you quack like a duck. You've seen this on TV where people go on the stage and they do things that they don't expect to do. So this is kind of like what's going through my head. And she says, no, it's not like that at all. And in fact, I'm going to record all our sessions so that you can then listen to them and listen to the messages that Spirit put within you so that you can now move forward in your life. And it was totally amazing. So about 6 to 9 months in our therapy, I realized that she was such a gift to me, and what she did would shape my career and my life. So it turned out, part of the process was forgiving the villains, because in fact, I had to bless them, because had I not been put in this situation, I had never been able to have gone to the other side, the near-death experience, been surrounded by beings of light, and seen what I've seen and received what I received. So in fact, there was really nothing to forgive. In fact, I blessed them for the gift that they gave me. Even though I had to suffer through all of these dark nights and terrible emotional highs and lows, that was part of the experience. Because in order for me to then become a fearless victor, I had to walk the walk and be a survivor in order to give it to others and share it with others. So what I know now more than ever is that, we are all given cards, and it's how we play them. The cards that have been dealt to us. What do we do with the circumstances and the experiences that show up in our life? And what I know for sure is that trauma and loss can feel like the end of life. I know that myself personally. It felt that way to me, and it paralyzed me in so many different ways. Paralyzed me physically. I could not get out of bed. My legs were frozen. I had to drag myself to go to the bathroom, literally on the floor where I would walk to the bathroom. I could not walk, like a dog, just kind of push myself. I was paralyzed. But what I know more than anything, that on a spiritual level now, life is for learning. There are no accidents, and that everything happens for a reason. And a lot of people say, "Are you kidding me? What are you talking about?" But the fact is that everything has shown up for you based on your soul contract. People, places, and things, no matter how horrific, no matter how difficult, no matter how hard, because you've chosen to have been given that for your own spiritual growth, your own soul growth. And that's just part of the process. I know life is turbulent. I know life is unpredictable. And each experience, no matter how massive or difficult, contain life lessons and opportunities to live more fearless, strengthen us, the resilience that is within us, the superpowers that we all have. Because when you're put in those situations, now what do you do with it? And we all have those inner resources. We all do. The fact is, it's not something you can plan for or train for or experience in advance because it's going to happen. It's just, that's not how it works. Now you're given the opportunity of an unpredictable situation shows up, and now what do you do with it? How do you handle it? I'm sure you've heard of the author Viktor Frankl. He's a famous psychologist and Holocaust survivor and author of Man's Search for Meaning. Well, one of the things he wrote was, quote, "What is to give light must endure burning." And my trauma had in fact brought a new light into my life, because having lived through all this darkness, I now needed to thrive. And even though I loved the corporate world and lived in it for 16 years, I knew that my purpose now was to empower women and other people who in fact were stuck in whatever traumatic or whatever negative experience or challenges they had been going through, and to figure out how to help them with tools that I had now experienced. So I went back to school. In 1993, I made that decision, and I also became a pastoral counselor, a hypnotherapist, a life coach, a Reiki master teacher, a teacher of meditation, because I felt that I needed those credentials to guide other women and to help other women experience their own gifts and empower them out of the darkness. And I truly believe that I needed to walk my own walk so that I could talk from experience, not find it in a book somewhere, where a lot of therapists have never experienced a lot of this. And it really has made such a difference in my life to be in that place. In 1999, after I opened an office, and I also had lots of clients that came to see me. I then founded a 501c3 nonprofit called the Work-Life Balance Institute for Women. And part of that, under its banner, if you will, I opened a magazine called Balance Magazine, which was about empowering women, personal growth, and self-development. We had power networking luncheons. Everything is about power, your power, your superpower. And the networking was so totally energized at a totally different level. By the time you left our networking luncheons, you had met all 80 people. You knew how you could support those women. You knew how to connect with them. You knew how to speak standing in front of a microphone. We also had 1,500 women come to our annual Ultimate Day of Balance conferences, where we had keynote speakers from all walks of the personal growth genre, all who were New York Times bestselling authors. And it was amazingly powerful. And people walked away with a picture of themselves on the cover of Balance Magazine as part of the goodie bag that we would give them. To this day, people say to me, I still have your magazine, all of them, on my desk, and a copy of my, it was on a masthead, so it said Balance Magazine, and the picture of you on the cover. There it was, in a picture frame. And I mean, people still have that, and it just touches me to no end, because we would receive so many letters and emails and business cards and saying, your magazine, whatever you created has changed me in so many ways. Thank you for all that you do. And really, my goal was, if I changed one life, it's all that mattered. And I know that I had changed a lot of lives, and I had a fabulous team of women that were so also very spiritual, very connected to the message. And that became our blueprint for empowerment and inspiration. And it was very powerful.
So now, along this journey, at what point did you start writing this story in this book about your experience?
So, I used to speak about my experience over the years at different events that people would invite me to when they found out about what had happened to me, and were inspired by it. But I wasn't ready to write my book. And they would say to me, why have you written a book? This is unbelievable. And I'm truly not a writer, yet I knew that the story had to be put down on paper. But I wasn't ready. And about 2.5, 3 years ago, I started writing. And it was just literally a chapter at a time, because let me tell you, writing is such a totally different experience than speaking, as you probably are aware. And as you write things, the entire process is very
It's
what's
cathartic and therapeutic.
Cathartic. That's the word. Thank you. The catharsis of reliving a lot of the things, the detail, the process is at a different level. It took me days to get through just pages of my experience. And I would then dream about it, and it would be like I was there again all over. So it was really, really hard. And I never wanted to go back there in that dark place. I wanted to still stay in the light that I know that I am and that I've been given to share with others. But while I was writing this book, unfortunately, my daughter got very ill. I'm being tested again at an unthinkable level, and a parent's worst nightmare, because even as I'm telling you the story, I'm feeling it and burning inside, because I have to now figure out how to change in a whole different way, and respond in a whole different way, and react in a totally different way, because, as I said before, life is fragile and life is turbulent. And on September 17th of 2018, our daughter Lauren, who at the age of 7 had survived all those hours in the trunk with me, and in fact was a miracle child. She came into my life I know more than anyone, so that I could survive in the trunk of the car. She wasn't even supposed to be born. This child was born 12 years after my first daughter, whose name happens to be Gina. And, you know, I know for sure that she came in to be part of my experience as part of her soul contract. And now she is passed away because she had for 2 years suffered with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And the only thing that kept her going seriously was that she had been engaged, had been living with her fiance, her two puppers, as she calls them, her puppies, and was going to be married on January 19, 2019. They had picked that date. It had a magical ring to it, I guess, and she loved it. And so she and I were working feverishly to get the flowers, get the tables, get the menu, and she wanted a destination wedding in Key Largo, Florida. And she had been dreaming of this destination wedding for a while, and unfortunately she had gone to get her wedding dress. She went to go try it on, and the inside of the dress, where you normally have some sort of a I don't know, some sort of a interior lining that has everything in it with the bra, and because it was strapless, apparently was not in the box that was delivered. So the day that we went to go try it on, she went with a port in her chest, obviously without any hair, and was wearing her little babushka, as we called it. And the lady in the wedding shop said, "Lauren, I'm sorry, you'll have to come back to try it on when the rest of the dress comes in." She was heartbroken, but she immediately, she's my daughter, and she immediately called the dress shop, which was in Chicago, which is where she bought it, and told them to FedEx it to her. And she didn't have too many days where she felt energized to try a dress on and go through that fitting scenario, and you stand there and all of that. And so the people from the dress shop took the dress out of the box, put it in one of those long hangers, and she looked at me and said, "Mom, would you take it home? Because I don't have any place in my apartment." And in fact, she didn't. She had a very small closet. And unfortunately, her wedding dress still hangs in my closet today. Lauren was 36 years old when she passed. And I know she's in heaven. I know she's with me every day of the week. I know she's with me every hour of the day. And I had no idea that a cancer-related procedure would in fact take her. She's the one that's pushed me to finish this book. I hear her every day. And while I was writing this book, she was my biggest supporter, my biggest cheerleader, was always at every event that I ever had, and read every magazine, and we spoke about everything. And we both loved jewelry, we both loved handbags, we both loved shoes. We had a lot of things in common. And, it's been really a very difficult time where my heart is shattered, obviously, as you can well imagine, into a million little pieces. There are days that I just cry. But I know that Lauren would want me to continue living and be with her 24/7 and live and publish this book in her honor. I never expected to write this with an epilogue about Lauren. And I know that through this unimaginable grief that I will continue to help others and try and get through this sadness and this despair in a whole different way, because it's different. This one is different. And as I said earlier, I walked the walk. For me, I went to grief counseling because I truly believe that counseling is everything. You need a witness. You need someone to cry in front of. You need someone to be able to talk to what you're feeling. And there are days that I show up where I'm a goddess, and there are other days that I'm just a fragile hot mess. And you know what? I'm there with she's there for me with no judgment. And Lauren is sitting next to me, rubbing my head, kissing me, and drying the tears that are flowing out of me, because there is nothing else that I can do. But in the face of all of it, I know that Lauren would want me to find the courage, again, the courage that I had to find before, to heal in a whole new way and in a new significant way, because I know that she would want that for me.
What part of your journey is coming up next after the loss of your daughter? Is there a continuation from that book? Is there a new door or a new understanding for you of how you want to serve after losing your daughter through this?
Well, I know that, and I hope that people understand that trauma and challenges and obstacles should not define us, should not defeat us, and should not destroy us, because they can. And they almost did for me. They almost did. But after losing everything, I think that I am proof that everything that happens to us, if we choose to use them to create and cultivate positive change, that and fulfillment and success, and yes, even joy, even with all of the darkness, joy can still come. You can still have joy. And so I believe that my destiny, my goal contract, my soul contract is to, and my goal in life is to make a difference in people's lives, to continue sharing my story, to have my book out there so that people can connect with whatever it is that they need to read in between the lines, if you will. Mm-hmm. And I know that Lauren was there with me every moment of it being written and being finished. And she continues to just inspire me from the other side. And so because I have had a spiritual experience, I feel very at peace with where she's at, knowing that she is with God. God is all that is, the angels, and she guides me every step of the way, every day. So from here, I hope that I just continue doing what I'm doing to help others heal.
Wonderful. Well, Susie, I want to thank you so much for sharing your journey so authentically and for being willing to be courageous enough to be recorded with such raw and emotional information, so personal to you and your family. So I want to thank you for that.
Thank you, Gina. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to do that. It's again, it's about putting it out in the world for others to heal.
Yeah. And we do that together, don't we?
Absolutely. You are a being of light, sharing so many beautiful stories with so many.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for doing the job that you're doing. We're all here to share and to, sorry, I got a little emotional when I was talking about Lauren.
Understandable.
It's still sitting right here when I talk about her. And yet she brings such smiles and joy when her picture is on my phone. The song that we sang, I had 12 grandchildren, and they sang the song from Rent about love. And you know how many hours there are in the day is the song that plays. And you know, Lauren was love. She was loved by so many. There was 450 people at her funeral. She's 36 years old. Who has that? This is how many people she's touched, and so many more. And there was just no room for any more cars or people. So I'm sure there could have been 1,000. But yeah, she was a very special young woman. And I'm blessed that she was my daughter, because she's helping others from the other side. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing her with us.
Thank you.
And I would imagine, Susie, that as it is with mothers and daughters, that she took some cues from you in the way that she showed up into the world. So you are a part and parcel for the mission that she completed while she was here.
Thank you for mentioning that. I wrote in the book a little section that I called LP-isms, because her nickname was LP. Mm-hmm. And in the book, there's a little section with 10 LP-isms about how to live your life. And that's how she lived her life. And her friend Tracy is the one that sent that to me. And she said, I don't know if you realize the power of how Lauren has changed my life. And she shared Lauren's LPisms with me. And I knew that's how she lived her life. You know, as they say, the acorn doesn't fall far from the tree. Well, she was my little acorn, and she would Reiki her friends, because she would watch me Reiki, you know, clients that would come. They would be on a massage table. Her friends would get bumped on their head or their leg, and she would literally put her hands on them, giving them Reiki energy. I mean, she was just an amazing child.
Well, you're an amazing woman too. So thank you so much, Susie, for sharing your story today.
Thank you so much, Gina.
My pleasure.
My love and light to you and to your audience.
I received that. Thank you so much. So friends, don't forget to subscribe down below. I'm going to have links to Susie's book. It's something that each one of us should read. She's a #1 Amazon release with this book, Getting to Forgiveness, What a Near-Death Experience Can Teach Us About Loss, Resilience, and Love. Please take the time to subscribe. Please take the time to share this video. Take the time to share light and love with the world. There's so much going on right now that people are upset and afraid about. Be a part of the solution and share these stories of inspiration with people so that they can see that there is good in the world, that there are wonderful things happening. And even through the fearful things, that if we have courage, beauty can come from the ashes. Thank you so much for joining us for this story today. And thank you for subscribing and sharing. And don't forget to click the links to Susie and her book. Get a copy. Share, 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 my friends. Thank you so much. Have courage and go shine your light today. Take care. Bye-bye.